let's get into the 80-20 rule. What is it?
Well, 80-20 has been around since 1906. There was a gentleman called Vilfredo Pareto in Italy who noticed that 80% of land ownership and 80% of wealth in Italy belonged to just 20% of Italians. He said. And then he looked around countries around him and found that to be true in all the other neighboring countries. And it turns out that that happens almost everywhere in the world. Then he noticed another interesting thing, that 20% of the pods in his garden were producing 80% of the peas. Could it be true for all agricultural produce? And lo and behold, it was. Then they looked at sales, then they looked at scientific invention, and everywhere the 80-20 rule was applicable. 80% of the effects are because of 20% of the causes. In management, what that means is that 20% of your people produce 80% of the results. Now that's harsh, that sounds harsh, but it is a reality that hasn't been debunked since 1906.
And what can our leaders do with that information?
So understand that. Number one. So in management parlance, we have something called a performance bell curve, which really is a derivative of the 80-20, which says that 20% of the people in any organization are top performers, 60% are average performers, 20% are bottom performers. If you think about it, the logic comes from Pareto, right? Now, the interesting thing is that while everybody says that we need to do a bell curve, and the bell curve, everybody loves to hate the bell curve, and managers are up in arms against HR saying, no, this is not right, and I don't have low performers. But the fact is, in this case, HR is right. In any large organization, you can't have everybody as a superstar, right? You have to have a normal bell curve distribution. So the bell curve is true, and it has been true since 1906. Number one, accept it. And number two, this idea that, we're going to give everybody stretch goals. That everybody should go above and beyond. Well, Pareto says that only 20% of the people are going to go above and beyond. Why not tell people you have free to choose where you want to be on the 20-60-20 curve and have an honest conversation with employees about how they want to work. So I may be a young mom, okay, who doesn't want to quit her job, but I don't want to work long hours because my priority for the next few years is my baby. So if I had an honest conversation with my boss, I'll do the minimum that's required to keep my job. It's okay if you pay me the minimum over the next 3 years, but after that I'll step it up. Boss says, okay, remember though, if you fall below the minimum, you'll be fired, and if you don't fall below the minimum, you'll be paid at the minimum. I'm fine with that, boss. Now, isn't that an honest conversation?
So have your employees do the minimum of those who want to do the minimum.
Or somebody says, well, boss, this is not my passion. To be honest with you, I work here to pay the bills. But I'm going to be an average performer. I'm going to do whatever needs to be done, but I don't have ambition to be CEO. My real love is theater. So I'm going to be in the middle 60, but I promise you my middle 60 quality will be good. Pay me accordingly. I don't want the biggest bonuses. Can we have that honest conversation? And then the top 20, there are always the 20% who are hungry, for whom the whole purpose in life is that job. They're going to come to you and say, hey, what minimum? I want to do maximum. And since 20% produce 80% of the results anyway, by letting people get away with as little as possible, your company's performance is not going to come down because the top 20 won't let it. Right? So that's the big liberating idea of the open source era, that you allow people to choose where they want to be on that curve. Because the middle 60 and the bottom 20 are not bad people. If you plotted the earnings of all Uber drivers in New York City, chances are there'll be 20% who will be very high earners, 60% who are average earners, and 20% who are low earners. Does that mean, can we look at that data and deduce that the bottom 20 or the bottom 50 are bad drivers and they treat their customers badly? No, we cannot. Like I said, they could be young moms who drive only when the kids are at school. They could be college students who are only driving on weekends to make some extra money. The point is, the open source era allows me to choose where I want to be at what point of time, and the top 20 will always be there to produce the 80%. So we have to understand the bottom 20, the middle 60, and the top 20 separately, and address their needs separately.
And you still get to the destination.
You absolutely do.